We come to Sutta number 10, Subha Sutta, about Subha, morality, concentration and wisdom. Okay, Digha Nikaya Sutta number 10, Subha Sutta. Thus have I heard, once the Venerable Ananda was staying at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's park, shortly after the Lord's final passing, and at that time the youth Subha, Tudeya's son, was staying at Savatthi on some business. Stop here for a moment. So from here, from this beginning, you can tell that this sutta was after the Buddha's parinibbana, after the Buddha's passing away. And Subha said to a certain young man, "Go, my lad, to where the ascetic Ananda is. Ask him in my name if he is in good health, free from fatigue, strong, vigorous, and dwelling in comfort, and say, it would be good if the Reverend Ananda would, out of compassion, visit the dwelling of Subha, the son of Tudeya." "Very good, sir," replied the young man. Then he went to the Venerable Ananda, exchanged courtesies with him, and sat down to one side. Then he delivered the message. Venerable Ananda replied, "It is not the right time, young man. Today I have taken some medicine. Perhaps it will be possible to come tomorrow, when the time and the occasion are suitable." And the young man rose, returned to Subha, and reported what had passed between him and the Venerable Ananda, adding, "My mission has been thus far accomplished, that the Reverend Ananda would probably take the opportunity to come tomorrow." Stop here for a moment. So here you see this Subha, today's son, he wants to talk to Venerable Ananda, and he invited Venerable Ananda to come to his house. But that doesn't seem to be very polite. If he has the interest to speak to Venerable Ananda, he should go and visit Venerable Ananda instead of asking Venerable Ananda to come to him. And indeed, as that night was ending, the Venerable Ananda, dressed in the early morning, took his robe and bowl, and accompanied by the Venerable Chetaka, came to Subha's dwelling and sat down on the prepared seat. Then Subha approached the Venerable Ananda, exchanged courtesies with him, and sat down to one side. Stop here for a moment. You see, this in the suttas and the Vinaya, when we find that when a senior monk goes out, generally he will, or any monk goes out, he's accompanied by another monk. And usually if a senior monk goes out, he'll bring a new monk, a young monk to accompany him and to serve him. This is also the tradition in the forest monasteries of Thailand. Then Subha said, "Reverend Ananda was for a long time the Reverend Gotama's personal attendant, dwelling in his presence and near him. You, Reverend Ananda, would know what things the Reverend Gotama praised, and with which he aroused, exhorted, and established people. Which, Reverend Ananda, were those things?" And the Venerable Ananda said, "Subha, there were 3 divisions of things which the Lord praised, and with which he aroused, exhorted, and established people. Which 3? The division of Aryan morality, Sila, the division of Aryan concentration, Samadhi, and the division of Aryan wisdom, Panya. These were the 3 divisions of things which the Lord praised, and with which he aroused, exhorted, and established people." One moment. These 3 things, Sila, Samadhi, Panya, are also basically the divisions found in the Noble Eightfold Path. Under the 8 factors of the Noble Eightfold Path, the 8 factors can be divided into 3 also, grouped into 3. And he said, "Well, Reverend Ananda, what is the division of Aryan morality which the Reverend Gotama praised?" And Venerable Ananda said, "Young sir, a Tathagata arises in the world, Arahant Sammasambuddha, endowed with wisdom and conduct, well-farer, knower of the worlds, incomparable trainer of men to be tamed, teacher of gods and humans, enlightened and blessed. He, having realized it by his own super knowledge, proclaims this world with its devas, maras and brahmas, its princes and people. He preaches the Dhamma which is lovely in its beginning, lovely in its middle, and lovely in its ending, in the spirit and in the letter, and displays the fully perfected and purified holy life. A disciple goes forth and practices the moralities. This description of the moralities are as in Sutta number 2, verses 41 to 63. Thus a monk is perfected in morality. That is the division of Aryan morality which the Lord praised. But something more remains to be done. It is wonderful, Reverend Ananda. It is marvelous. This division of Aryan morality is perfectly fulfilled, not left incomplete. And I do not see this division of Aryan morality fulfilled thus anywhere among the ascetics and Brahmins of other schools. And if any of them were to have found this perfection in themselves, they would have been so delighted that they would have said, "We have done enough. The goal of our asceticism has been reached. There is nothing more to be done." And yet the Reverend Ananda declares that there is more to be done. Stop here for a moment. So, what this Subha is saying is what nowadays also we find. There are certain monks, they are very sticky about the Vinaya, the moral conduct, and they go into, sometimes they split hairs, go into very detail, and seem to be very fussy about certain rules and all that. And they stop there, just like this Subha says, they think they have perfected the holy life, and they don't go beyond sila. But as Reverend Ananda says, there is more to be done. Reverend Ananda, what is the division of Aryan concentration which the Reverend Gautama praised? And then Reverend Ananda now goes into a description of the other factors under charana, the practice or conduct of the holy life. Things like guarding the six sense doors, practicing sati sampajanya, mindfulness and clear awareness, contentment, moderation in eating, devoted to wakefulness, the 7 good qualities, sattva dhamma, seclusion, aloofness from society, going to live in a secluded place, an aranya, and then practicing meditation and attain the abandonment of the 5 hindrances, and then after that attain the 4 jhanas. That is the division of Aryan concentration which the Lord praised. But something more remains to be done. So here, after explaining the process by which a monk practices charana, the conduct or practice of the holy life, and attains the 4 jhanas, remember Ananda says there's still more to be done. And Subha said, "It is wonderful, Reverend Ananda. It is marvelous. This division of Aryan concentration is perfectly fulfilled, not left incomplete. And do not see this division of Aryan concentration fulfilled thus anywhere among the ascetics and Brahmins of other schools. And if any of them were to have found this perfection in themselves, they would have been so delighted that they would have said, 'We have done enough. The goal of our asceticism has been reached. There is nothing more to be done.' And yet the Reverend Ananda declares that there is more to be done." This development of samadhi, in the earlier sutta we read, I think yesterday, it was development of the mind. In the previous sutta we heard about development of morality, development of the mind, citta, and development of wisdom. So this samadhi is actually development of mind. Development of mind, the term is bhavana. Bhavana, development. And development of mind, you find here, always culminates in the 4 jhanas. When a person attains the 4 jhanas, the mind becomes developed, because he has got rid of the 5 hindrances, and not only that, the mind is in such a high state that it becomes pliant, malleable and wieldy. And in that state, after attaining that state, the mind is workable, and you can use it in which whatever way you want, just like some monks are having attained the 4th jhana, the psychic powers come, and they can walk through the wall. If they want those psychic powers, they can acquire those psychic powers, like the heavenly eye, they can see heaven, they can see hell. The heavenly ear, they can listen to the sounds of ghosts and devas and all that. That is provided they want to develop it. And then memory of past lives, reading other people's minds, etc. So that is the development of the mind, which is basically attainment of the 4 jhanas. Reverend Ananda, what is the division of Aryan wisdom which the Reverend Gautama praised? So here, Venerable Ananda describes the use, how a monk uses the 4 jhanas, attains contemplation, knowledge, attains a mind-made body, attains a heavenly eye, attains a heavenly ear, attains a memory of past lives, attains the ability to read others' minds, and the various types of psychic powers, like flying through the air, passing through the wall, etc. And finally, attainment of the destruction of the asavas, destruction of the tendency of the mind to flow, which is basically liberation. And then there is nothing further here, the Venerable Ananda says. That is the division of Aryan wisdom which the Lord praised, with which He aroused, exhorted and established people. Beyond that, there is nothing to be done. And Subha said, "It is wonderful, Reverend Ananda. It is marvelous. This division of Aryan wisdom is perfectly fulfilled, not left incomplete. And do not see this division of Aryan wisdom fulfilled thus anywhere among the ascetics and Brahmins of other schools. And there is nothing further to be done. Excellent, Reverend Ananda, excellent. It is as if someone were to set up what had been knocked down, or to point out the way to one who had got lost, or to bring an oil lamp into a dark place, so that those with eyes could see what was there. Just so the Venerable Ananda expounded the Dhamma in various ways." Reverend Ananda, I go for refuge to the Lord Buddha Gautama, the Dhamma and the Sangha. May the Reverend Ananda accept me as a lay follower who has taken refuge from this day forth as long as life shall last. That's the end of the sutta. You notice here in the last part, even though the Buddha has passed into Parinibbana, this Subha says he takes refuge in the Buddha Gautama, in the Dhamma and the Sangha. And here it just says Sangha, but actually I think the Pali is the Bhikkhu Sangha. When a person takes refuge in the 3 refuges, he takes refuge in the Bhikkhu Sangha, the Sangha of monks. So always remember, we take refuge only with these three, the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Bhikkhu Sangha. A lot of people nowadays, instead of taking refuge in the Buddha, which means listening to the Buddha's words, a lot of people, they just listen to the teacher's word, and that is taking refuge in their teacher, not in the Buddha and the Buddha's Dhamma. So okay, we shall end here. Anything to discuss? This word consciousness, in the suttas, consciousness refers to generally the 6 consciousnesses, the seeing consciousness, the hearing consciousness, the smelling, taste, touch and thinking consciousness, the 6 consciousness at the 6 sense doors, and these 6 consciousness creates the world. The first 5 creates the outer world, the world of sights, sounds, smells, taste, touch. Sights means anything that you see, any form that you see, which is basically the physical world, the world that we see, is the sights. Sounds are all the sounds in the world, smells, taste, touch. Touch are the things you touch. And then Last one, the mind is the inner world. Inner world. So when we talk about consciousness, vijnana, normally we refer to these 6 consciousness. But there are another 2 terms used in Pali to describe the mind. One is citta, one is mano. Mano refers to the thinking mind, and mano is actually one of the 6 sense organs. The 6th one, the last one, the mind base is called mano. And mano is the thinking mind. And the other word is citta. Citta is a very wide word. It has many meanings. It can mean basically like the whole world is in citta. It's in citta. And also thoughts are also called citta. These are the 3 words referring to the mind: vijnana, mano, and citta. Okay.
Buddha teaches that everything is impermanent. Why is everything impermanent?
Oh, why is everything impermanent? Everything in the world is impermanent. Okay? Because everything in the world is basically energy. All things in the world are basically atoms. Atoms are just energy, a form of energy. And atom itself does not cease to be moving. All the things inside an atom are always moving. The protons, electrons, neutrons, photons, mesons, everything. So because basically energy in the world is never stationary, is always moving. So because of movement, there is change. There is change. So because of change, everything in the world is impermanent. But because our feelings make us like and dislike. Those things that you like, you want it to remain as it is. But unfortunately, it cannot remain as it is. So when it goes away, you have suffering, you have dukkha. And those things that you dislike, you want it to go away immediately, like sickness. But things in the world are beyond our control. That's why the Buddha says, nothing in the world is the self. If anything in the world is the self, the Buddha says, you will have control over it. Just like if money is yours, you can spend it in any way you like. But if it's not yours, then it's beyond your desire to spend it in any way you want, right? So even the body is not yours. When the body falls sick, you cannot decide you want to be well. You have to wait your time, right? Because everything is impermanent. Even what is undesirable, after some time will fade away, will go away. So if we understand this, then whatever happens, we know it is impermanent. It is going to change. So if there is something that you like, so you know we should not be too attached to it, because it's going to go away from us. And if you are attached to it, it's going to give you suffering. And if any suffering comes to you, you also accept it that it is impermanent. So you know that it will go away. You just have to wait for the time for it to go away. So if you have this understanding, whatever happens to you, your mind is not disturbed. The Buddha says there are 2 types of suffering: physical suffering and mental suffering. Physical suffering is something that nobody can get rid of. Even the Buddha has physical suffering. Arahants also have physical suffering. That's the nature, is because the nature of the body is to grow old, to become sick, and to die. But mental suffering, the Buddha says, Aryans don't have mental suffering. Aryans understand the nature of the world. So whatever happens, they accept it. So then you don't have mental suffering comes from thinking. If you cannot accept something, then the mind starts to proliferate. One thought becomes 10, 10 becomes 100, 100 thoughts become 1,000. then that suffering is prolonged. Is that right? You have to wait. Once after you switch on, you wait a while. Sometimes so the question is, what's the difference between consciousness and mindfulness? It's quite a good question, because nowadays people, a lot of people practice mindfulness meditation, and they think you have to be mindful. Whatever you do, you have to be mindful. That is true, but then they interpret this word sati as mindfulness, as general mindfulness. Actually, general mindfulness we have all the time. We have mindfulness all the time. Whenever anything impinges on your six sense doors, you are mindful. For example, the sound comes to you, you are mindful. Like now you are listening to a Dhamma talk, you are mindful. But suddenly, if outside a car were to sound the horn, very loudly, your attention will be pulled there, and you're also mindful of that. And if a mosquito bites you, even when you're listening to a Dhamma talk, you feel the itch, you're mindful of that. So actually, we are mindful all the time. But the problem is, most of the time, we are mindful of those things which are not of benefit to us. For example, you are trying to meditate, and your mind starts to think of your office, starts to think about your work, starts to think of your family, and all that. So you are trying to train your mind to be one-pointed. You don't want to think of all these things. But unfortunately, because you don't have a good control of your mind, you are mindful of those things that you should not be mindful of. So sati is not general mindfulness. Sati is to train your mind to put attention on only 4 objects which are beneficial to you. These 4 objects are to be mindful of your body, or the nature of your body, your feelings, or the nature of your feelings, your mind, and the Buddha's Dhamma. Because these are beneficial to you, helps you to reduce your suffering. But if you pay attention to beautiful sights, which people like to pay attention to, nice sounds, fragrant smells, good taste, and nice touch, then the Buddha says that is Mara's bait. Mara is always trying to catch us by putting out these baits at the 6 sense doors. If you pay attention to it, you get caught by Mara, your craving will arise. And if you can't get what you want, you crave for, then grief will follow. That's why the Buddha says always in the suttas you find not to guard the sense doors. In the practice of guarding the sense doors, it is always said that if you don't guard your sense doors, then covetousness and grief will arise. Covetousness means if you're not guarding the 6 sense doors, you pay too much attention to sight, sound, smells, and all that. Either you crave for those lovely things that attract you at the 6 sense doors, or if you cannot get them, then grief arises. So you don't want these 2 states, because they are unwholesome states. So the mindfulness that we practice is a specific mindfulness, to put your mindfulness on the right place, namely these 4 things. Okay. So is that what you asked? Mindfulness and consciousness. Consciousness is general mindfulness. General, you're conscious of whatever comes into your 6 sense basis. Mindfulness is you can train yourself to direct your mindfulness. Okay, does that answer your question? Yeah.
The Buddha shares with the Bodhisattva on the Arupa jhana, then his advice is, he says that he has gained his control perception, and the trick is not to think and imagine, because once he thinks and imagine, the causal perception will come in. So this is inconsistent with the second jhana, where thought and sustained thought is application of thought ceases. So, but when this is Arupa jhana already, and yet Buddha is still talking about controlling the not thinking. Because I was wondering, once you go beyond the second jhana, won't it be automatic?
Okay. In the second jhana, you are still, in a sense, thinking, because you are putting your attention on this piti and sukha. And when you put your attention on piti and sukha, in the first jhana, you also have piti and sukha. But in the first jhana, the piti and sukha is born of seclusion. And in the first jhana, you have what the Buddha calls skillful thoughts. You still can have skillful thoughts, like trying to tell yourself to remember how to retrace your steps. But in the second jhana, the piti and sukha is born of concentration. And because it is born of concentration, the mind is much stronger. And because the mind is strong in the second jhana, the thoughts cannot arise. But even though the thoughts cannot arise, the monk in that state is clearly aware, clearly mindful of whatever is happening. So, in this cessation of perception, then he decides not even to, here he says to think or imagine, not to move the mind in any way.
Would it be that he is trying not to perceive at all as where the perception stops, and we can control it at that level? Because once at second jhana, the mind is silent already, is no silent. So the mind is ekagata, doesn't move anymore in any stage. So but this perception...
But this...
is so fine that I was thinking it's not so much of thinking so pause at thinking. Perhaps it's perceiving.
But you see, even among in the second jhana, even though the thoughts have ceased, because the mind is in such a... you can feel the mind is so strong that the thoughts cannot arise. But the will is still there, the will. So, because, for example, even in the second jhana, even though the thoughts don't arise, he can decide he wants to move into the third jhana and all these things. So that is a movement of the mind. It is not thoughts, but there is movement of mind, which he finally decides not to have any will at all. And that's why I said this is volition. As long as you have volition to do this, to do that, the mind is still active, is still mindful. So he doesn't want to exercise any volition at all. Doesn't want to pay attention also. Then slowly the mind will stop. So it is this volition I mentioned that is important. As long as you have any desire at all, any volition at all, the mind will continue to work.
I was wondering, I remember the particular sutta, since it's not up to us whether to treat the meaning that they will enter the first or second jhana, is it? I cannot remember that first because it is conditioned.
No, I think that one is not the first or second jhana, but the state of cessation. Before he enters the state of cessation, he will decide how long he's going to enter the state of cessation.
Just a quick question. Is jhana controllable in the sense of, if let's say I would enter first jhana, would I, the next meditation session, would I be able to sit down and say, I want to enter first jhana and then immediately do first jhana, or would I go all the steps?
Only if you have got that kung fu to be able to enter that first jhana or come out of it or enter another jhana. If you haven't trained your mind up to that level, you won't be able to. Even a person attains, for example, the first jhana or second jhana, if he has only just started to attain it, even though he wants to remain in that jhana, he cannot. He will fall out of it because the mind is not strong enough.
But after a while, I'll be controlled.
Yes, yeah.
Just enter it.
Yes, if he's so good at it. That's why in the suttas, the Buddha says the Arahant disciples, they can attain the 4 jhanas at will. And when they want to, they just sit down, but they have to sit down and concentrate their mind. So we find, for example, in the Maratajanya Sutta and the Majjhima Nikaya, one day our Venerable Mahamoggallana, the monk with the disciple with the greatest psychic power, he was practicing walking meditation, and suddenly he felt the stomach very heavy, as though something was in that stomach. So he decided to check it out. But even though he has great psychic power, he cannot just know. He has to sit down and enter samadhi. Then very quickly he knows that Mara has gone into his stomach.
It seems like in the case of these persons are talking about the 8 jhanas, from there he goes into all the wisdom insights, and then he actually you say he realized the 4 noble truths and so on and so forth. Does that mean that he actually use satipatthana or something to contemplate on the 4 noble truths and enlighten?
A person uses satipatthana to enter the jhanas. You practice satipatthana so that satipatthana means intense state of mindfulness, intense state. Then you attain the jhanas, and then after attaining the jhanas, he attains psychic powers. The Buddha attains, and then on the night of enlightenment, the Buddha looked into the past life. Then he remembered that he was a disciple of the Buddha Kassapa. And then the last watch of the night, he contemplated the 4 noble truths. Contemplated.
Contemplating means thinking?
In the normal sense, is thinking.
Using a concentrated mind?
Yes, because he doesn't contemplate in jhana. He has to come out of jhana.
The Father is speaking about the acquired self. What is acquired self? There are 3 kinds of acquired self.
This acquired self is a presumed self. You can say it's a presumed self, and it's also acquired in the sense that the Buddha says basically we have the gross self. But then from the gross self, if he meditates, he can acquire the mind-made self. And then he can acquire the formless self.
So mind itself is already in the realm of supernatural power.
Yes. In the suttas, the Buddha described how he can make this mind-made self come out from his head. Just like drawing a sword from the scabbard, its cover, pulling it out. So when he comes out, he is this mind-made self. So the body is lying there like a shell. So then he can travel with his mind-made self.
Actually, my question is very complex, but let's start with the basic one. Equanimity, there are two types. One is basically the neutral feelings that one gets. The other equanimity, where we is rooted on vipassana, like insight. That equanimity, I'd like to ask something more on the quality that one's acquired, that one's view, one purifies one's view, one gets closer and closer to yata uparayana, that seeing the way things are with total equanimity, that is being an arahant. Does one's equanimity in that sense progress as the way we look at things become more and more detached? Is there different levels? It's not so much as the quality that we get from jhana, the neutral feeling.
Equanimity means not allowing the mind to move so much. Now, even an arahant doesn't mean arahant is like a stone, does not have feelings. Arahant also has feelings. But in the Majjhima Nikaya, one of the last suttas, the Buddha talked about, I forgot the title already, but basically the arahant, whatever feelings arise, they subside very fast. But that type of equanimity requires a very strong mind, a mind that has very strong samadhi. Because a person has very strong samadhi, then only whatever feelings arise, it does not shake the mind, because the mind is solid like a rock. So feelings arise, but they very quickly they die down. So if you just practice vipassana or you understand the Dhamma, if your mind is not backed up with good samadhi, you can move easily. So you got to have wisdom plus samadhi, concentration, to have good equanimity. But like in the state of the fourth jhana, the Buddha describes that you have utter purity of equanimity and sati, mindfulness. So in the state of the fourth jhana, the equanimity is very strong, utterly purified, because there is no sukha and dukkha. Bodily sukha and bodily dukkha is not there. Even mental sukha and mental dukkha is not there. But when a person comes out of the fourth jhana, the mind can still move. So depending on the wisdom, if the person has wisdom in addition to the fourth jhana, then he does not allow the mind to move. But somebody like, for example, Devadatta, he has strong samadhi, but is not balanced with wisdom. So he allows the mind to move. For example, hatred for the Buddha. When the Buddha calls him spittle, in front of everybody, then he got so annoyed. So the ego got the better of him. So it's whether you allow the mind to move or not. If you have the wisdom, you don't allow the mind to move. You know what you should do, you do. What you should not do, you don't do. But you don't have that wisdom, then you do what you should not do, like Devadatta.
Somebody was explaining when a person gets to the fourth jhana, there's samadhi or sama samadhi, then the next step is sanya. We can, when the mind is pliable, we can actually use it. Takes after we come up from concentration, concentrate on the form of the two.
That's provided you already have a right view.
Yeah.
If you don't have, then you're like an external ascetic. They only acquire the psychic powers. They don't have right view.
That is why in the Bojjhanga Sutta, the last two factors in the Bojjhanga Sutta is not by accident that it's the last two, because you have the samadhi and then upekkha. So this upekkha, which means that it's this upekkha where you have the unshakable mind or wisdom. After the samadhi, then is upekkha, then last two factors of the Bojjhanga Sutta.
In the Bojjhanga Sutta, I think the equanimity is like the other factors connected with samadhi. Samadhi.
Then I was wondering why samadhi has the upekkha within the samadhi itself, is four jhana.
You see, like the other factors like tranquility, all that is also part of samadhi, but they are separately. Okay, shall we end here?